Good morning. Welcome to Walking Boxing. It is Monday, April 7th, 2025. And what a big day of fights it was yesterday. Tim Tszyu getting on, or back on, the winners list with a very impressive stoppage of Joey Spencer. So we'll get onto that in a second. But on this day, back in 1972, all-time great light heavyweight Bob Foster stopped Vicente Rondon in the second round to not only retain his WBC title, but also add the WBA light heavyweight title to his trophy cabinet. Now, actually, I think he did already have the WBA and WBC belts, but as is still the case these days, the WBA in its wisdom stripped him of his WBA title because he wouldn't fight a complete unknown, or unworthy challenger. So they stripped him of that, but he got it back with that second round stoppage of Vicente Rondon back in 1972. Also on this day, and I'm sure a lot of you will be familiar with this one, Marco Antonio Barrera with a decision win over Prince Nassim Hamed back in 2001. Was that at the MGM? I can't remember. It's definitely in Las Vegas. And that was it for pretty much Nassim Hamed. That was pretty much curtains. Did he come back for one fight after that? I can't remember. But if he did, it was against a nobody and he was quickly retired. And Marco Antonio Barrera had this effect on people because he did the same to our man, Bomber, Robbie Peden. He beat Robbie Peden at the MGM Grand in the main event. Bomber, or Robbie, would only fight one more time about a year and a half later, and he would lose. I can't remember who he lost to, but it was, let's just say it wasn't exactly a pound-for-pound fighter at the time, and that was all we saw of Robbie Peden as well. And I hope he's doing well out there. Bomber, I haven't seen him for about 12 months. A true legend of Aussie boxing is Bomber. Inside and outside the ring, let's just say that. All right, on to yesterday's fights. And look, it was a really good card. I thought it was a good day of fights. Probably, I won't say it was predictable because there was a couple of upsets in there, wasn't there? We'll get to the main event, obviously, in a second. But I was really impressed with young Cooper O'Connell. They did exactly what they needed to do for Cooper, apart from giving him any more attention, which I've been pretty vocal about. But yeah, a good win yesterday over Ben Amos, I think his name was. Look, when you have a pro debut, you've got to, let's just say, be matched accordingly. And I thought Cooper looked really good. You've got to remember that he's a kid. Is he 18, 19? First fight in the pros, so you've got to have an opponent who you can sort of get used to the whole pro thing and the bright lights and all the rest of it, different gloves, all the rest of it. And I thought he handled himself really well and got the stoppage. And big things, I reckon, for Cooper. He could be a really good young up-and-coming star of Australian boxing. It's a bit of an understatement when you think about it, because he's the reigning youth world amateur champion. So, and he's a good young kid as well. And obviously from very, very good stock with Shotgun Shannon O'Connell. Has he got a nickname yet? I wonder if he has. I wonder if it's going to be Double Barrel Cooper or something like that. We'll see. Or Cannonball Cooper. But no, good young kid, and I'm glad that he's on his way. And hopefully on to bigger things. Now, I'm just going to go from memory, by the way. I can't be bothered getting my phone out. I'm in no particular order, the undercard. Who was next? Was it... Actually, I'm going to get my phone out because I can't remember. What was the other undercard fight? What was it? Jeez, what a start to the day. Where is BoxRec? All right. Cody Beacon, he was the one I was thinking of. Cody Beacon with a stoppage over Ryan Day. And he looked pretty good, Cody Beacon. He's going to be a good young prospect as well. What does he go to? He goes to 8-2. All right, so that was a second round stoppage, by the way. So yep, good win for Cody to get back on track. And then we had, well, this is probably the most, well, I won't say the most talked about fight on the card because we know who that was, but of the undercard. Andre Mikhailovich dropping a 6-round decision to Blake Wells. Now, remember in my previews of this card, I did say that Blake Wells, in my opinion, would upset Andre Mikhailovich, and he did. Now, whether it was warranted or not is another story. I just thought it was a really close fight. Blake Wells, he was busted up from all sorts of things that were happening in there. And whether you think Andrei Mikhailovich won the fight or not, it was a shocking performance from Andrei. I thought he looked really, really average yesterday. I don't think he took Blake Wells seriously. He just looked underprepared. I don't know whether it was a style of Blake Wells that didn't make him look very good, but not the fighter that earned himself a world title shot. Well, I say earned in inverted commas, but whether or not he done enough to get that world title shot. And I thought actually performed really well in the fight. We all know that, you know, maybe Janabek was maybe not out of first or second gear, but that doesn't matter. He showed a ton of heart, and I thought really rose to the occasion to hang in there with an absolute killer in Janabek, and we just didn't see that yesterday. Really disappointed in Andrei Mikhailovich, and he's got to go back to the drawing board. Now, whether it was the fact that maybe Blake Wells is a lot better than what he thought he was, or maybe he underestimated him, maybe they didn't have a proper camp, I don't know. But at the end of the day, Blake Wells got the decision. Now, I thought it could have even been a draw. I thought it was a really close fight, tough fight. Both boys, very, very rugged guys. But, either way, even if he had got the win yesterday, Andrei Mikhailovich got a lot of work to do. And I just think guys like Isaac Hardman, Michael Zarafa, of course, these types of guys would really make, and Matteo Tapia as well, would really make mincemeat of Andrei Mikhailovich. Look, he's tough, he's rugged. He can punch a little bit, but I'm not sure whether, I've never been the biggest fan of our old mate Pitch boxing with the thongs over there, but I'm just thinking maybe if he wants to take his career a little bit more seriously, maybe he has to go to a more renowned trainer. But it was a shocking performance, and look, end of the day, probably got what was coming to him, an upset loss. Got to do more when you're the favourite. I know it was only a 6-round fight, which I think is, I can't believe it was only a 6-rounder, especially because it was on the undercard of the undercard, if that makes sense. I get it on the pay-per-views, they've got to stick to a certain amount of rounds, but I reckon they could have easily made it even an 8-round and they would have got away with it. They could have started at whatever time it was. Was at 9:30 or whatever it was they started, but yeah. Anyway, that's it is what it is now. He's got another loss on his record, and he's got a lot of soul searching to do, and whether he can come back is another question. On to the main card, Callum Peters, pretty predictable knockout of, was it Tom Lenihan? Came up from Victoria, and you could probably tell by the body language as soon as he got in the ring what was going to happen. Callum Peters super confident. They obviously knew each other pretty well. Callum Peters actually went over to his corner for a bit of a hug and a chat before the fight, which was something you don't often see. But Callum Peters got the job done like a very, very good fighter should. But Lenihan was so far out of his depth it wasn't funny. So again, Peters did what he had to do. He looked impressive. He's going to be a good fighter, this kid. And I think they're going to keep putting him in there with these types of guys for maybe the first sort of 8, 9, 10 fights, get him a little bit of experience, obviously get his record nice and padded, and then they'll step him up. But he's a good fighter. Now, there's talk that he might be fighting Kira Rushton in July, I think it is. Now, it is the case. That's a pretty big test first up for him. I still think he'll beat Kira Rushton, but surprisingly they're going to put him in there with him so quickly. But yeah, very, very good young kid. Or young man, and he's going to be a great prospect. Is Callum Peters. Isaiah Seti with the upset over Brent Walton. Well, was it an upset? Probably not. He upset the hometown boy, Brent Walton, by split decision, I think it was, in a 5-rounder. I don't mind these 5-rounders for the young guys, and so we're not, because in a 4-round fight it's very easy to get a draw. 2 rounds each, obviously, but when it's a 5-rounder, I don't mind it. It just eliminates the prospect of a draw most times. And just a nice round number, isn't it? But I thought Seti, good young kid. I do think I actually maybe picked Brent Walton to win, but only because he's the hometown fighter, and Seti can be a bit unpredictable. But geez, when he turns up, very, very good young kid. So I was impressed with him. He got the win over Brent Walton. I don't want to miss any fights here, guys. So I am going to go to BoxRec just quickly, because I don't want to miss someone. I went off the cuff the other day, and I forgot about Cole Mazudi and Dan Hill. All right, I think I've got all of those undercard. All right, then we get to the main fights on the card, and we had Brendan Grush. Was it the order it was in? Whatever. Actually, I'll start with the international fight. Andre Saavedra with the stoppage of Mikkel Nielsen. I don't know why. I still don't know why the fight was on the card. I think it was almost a little bit of an atmosphere killer, this one. Saavedra, look, he's a good fighter. Again, I just don't know why they put him on this card, especially where they put him on the card. As I said, I thought it was a little bit of a vibe killer. At the pub, we had the fights on and everyone was sort of into it. And when this fight came on, a lot of people went out for coffee and something to eat and really, or beer, and really just didn't take much notice. But anyway, they're getting behind Saavedra, so good on him. But he had that good win over Nielsen, and he'll be obviously world ranked now, and who knows, maybe a world title fight coming for him at some stage. Or could we see him in with the likes of Michael Zarafa or Matteo Tapia or one of these guys? What a fight. Either one of those would be. It would be fantastic. Then we get to the heavyweights. Brendan Grush, stopped by Liam Talivaha. There you go. I finally got it after the fight. Talivaha is his proper name. I was listening intently to the commentary yesterday thinking, how the hell do they say this guy's name? I think I've said it Taliva or Taliva or whatever. Talivaha is apparently the right way to pronounce it. Look, really impressed with Liam. I thought, it's very tough to come back from that type of knockout that was put on him by Brendan Grush in their first fight. And to come up against the same fighter again after that type of loss would be extremely difficult for him. And I thought he was all class, box smart, and really exposed Brendan Grush for probably been, well, something we probably knew he was, but we loved him anyway. Very limited fighter as Brendan Grush. Now, I thought Brendan Grush would actually get the job done again, but I was wrong. I wasn't sure Liam Talivaha would be able to come back from that devastating knockout, but he did. And as I said, he boxed really smart. He picked his punches, didn't get caught up in throwing bombs with Brendan Grush, and he's a very, very classy fighter, Liam Talivaha. So now I like saying his name because I can get it right. But yeah, again, and the way you put him away as well, I thought is what good fighters do. Hurt him, dropped him, didn't get excited, picked his shots really, really well, and then dropped him a second time and put him right out of commission. And to the point where Brendan Grush really didn't know what was happening, did he? Credit to Brendan Grush as well. I was critical of him in the lead up to it with his attitude and some of his comments of what he said about Talivaha, but he was classy after the fight as well. Thanked everyone, gave full credit to Liam, and he'll be back as well. He's a crowd pleaser. Plenty of fights for Brendan Grush down the track. He'll be on all the no limit cards. Don't worry about that, and fully welcome. And I don't look sometimes, even though I can be critical in the lead up to a fight with some of these guys, it's how they act, I think, after the fight, especially if they lose. And I thought he was full of class, Brendan Grush, and he's back on my good list now, not the naughty list. Then we go to the Koa Mazudi Dan Hill fight. Again, very, very impressed with Koa Mazudi. I thought that Dan Hill, I did pick Koa Mazudi to win on points, but I did think that Dan Hill would give him a lot more troubles than he did. And I was just really impressed with Cohen, the way he's obviously learned a lot in those fights with Nikita and Ben Mahoney and Joel Camilleri and these types of guys. Very, very good performance from Cohen, and I think he's improved out of sight. He's obviously done a lot of sparring with Tim in training camp as well, and you could see that in the ring yesterday. You could see a really good, classy Aussie fighter against maybe someone that's, well, you know, just clearly at domestic level, at the sort of lower end. Look, good, tough, young kid, don't get me wrong. But as I always say, there's levels in it. And I just thought Koa Mazudi showed that he was a level or two above Dan Hill yesterday. And that's not to say there's no, nothing in store for Dan Hill down the track. I mean, he's a crowd pleaser, very, very humble type of guy, always comes to fight. But I think he's the type of guy that needs to probably be matched carefully because he's all heart. And if he gets in with someone that might be a bit of a lot maybe harder puncher than Koa Mazudi, you'd hate to sort of see him get knocked around or hurt. So there goes my wife Tara with my son going to work. But yeah, really, really good performance by Koa Mazudi. Really impressed. And look, I've always sort of said he's just domestic level at best. But geez, after that performance yesterday, could he maybe step up and do a bit more internationally? Because based on that, maybe you've got to say yes. So we'll see. But yeah, again, excellent performance from Cohen, and congratulations to him. And also Dan Hill, you will be back, mate. And always like to see Dan Hill fight. All right, on to the main event. What else can you say but an excellent performance by Tim Zhu. The only thing I will say though was, and I'm not being glass half empty here, but was it a case of Tim being that good or Joey Spencer being that bad? I think it was a little bit of both. Not taking anything away from Tim's performance. I thought he was excellent. He fought exactly the way I wanted him to fight. And I think he did say after the fight as well, it was very much on his mind. Don't go out there and get caught up in a slugfest and in a war and going toe-to-toe. Be patient, be careful, be composed. And that's exactly what he did. I was really impressed with Tim. You could see, even to the point where he was biting down on his mouth guard, you could see he was concentrating intensely about just getting it right, getting the game plan right. And you could see that was to take center ring. It was to get him on the back foot. It was to be patient, make him punch, then counter over the top. Those little uppercuts and hooks inside, really precise punching from Tim. And all things aside with the whole fight, I was impressed the most about. Yes, he had a good kit of punches, did Tim. He precise, he got him out of there and did what he really needed to do. But it was more so the fact for me, this is the thing I was really curious about whether he could do, and that was just that composure that he had. Sticking to the game plan, not getting caught up, taking Joey Spencer's punches on the gloves and countering with really good little inside uppercuts, going to the body, coming back to the head. That's what I was more impressed about than just getting the win for Tim. It was just the way he went about it. It wasn't a desperate win. He didn't try too hard. It was really the Tim that we all wanted to see, and I think we saw it. As I said, Joey Spencer, really disappointing. And again, maybe that was just all Tim, but geez, I expected a lot more from him. Look, I think I did pick Tim by 7th or 8th round stoppage. I just thought he'd have a little bit more durability. Now, look, actually, he was durable. You can't take that away from Joey Spencer. He didn't hit the deck. I was surprised by the stoppage, if I'm being honest. Wasn't the referee, it was the corner. And I'm not arguing the point, by the way, at all, because the corner know their fighter better than anyone, especially the fact his dad was his chief second. So certainly not having a go at his corner for stopping the fight. But I was surprised that, yeah, he was taking some punches, but I didn't think at any time he was seriously hurt and rocked and on the verge of going down. Yeah, he took a lot of punches, but Tim, you could almost see, wasn't loading up. He was just picking his shots. He was throwing a lot of punches, which was great, and landing a lot of punches, but that was another impressive part from Tim. He wasn't loading up with big bombs, and we've seen it in the past against Harrison and Ocampo and these types of guys where he really loads up and leaves himself open. That was another impressive part. He kept the chin down, kept the gloves and elbows tucked in and really picked his shots and landed some good punches on Spencer. But I was just surprised that even though Spencer was taking punches and under heavy fire, I just don't think at any stage he was really hurt. But again, the corner know him better than anyone, and end of the day, at 24 years of age, it's good to maybe, as I say, stop at one punch too early than one punch too late. So certainly not having a go at his corner, but I was just surprised at a fight of this magnitude. They've come all the way here, and he really had one bad round, really. That was in the first 3 rounds, he was competitive. I think Tim won the rounds clearly, but at least he was competitive. But again, he just didn't offer anything, did he? He was continually beaten to the punch. He was hesitant. It didn't really show anything. And I'm struggling to get or put my finger on it or get my head around it. And again, maybe it was just the fact that Tim had him covered in all aspects. Maybe we'll just put it down to that. But yeah, I was just disappointed. As rapt as I was for Tim's performance, I was really disappointed in what Joey Spencer dished up. And I know all the media and everyone, they build it up, and that's great. I never bought into the fact that he was at the absolute elite level, but I expected more. I'd seen a few of his fights, yeah, disappointed. But again, totally over the moon for Tim. And I think the whole thing for Tim was more so, at his team, was more so just relief and satisfaction. There was no over-the-top celebrations. I know Tim did sort of say afterwards, we're back, baby, and all that sort of stuff. That was probably the only thing. But I looked at his wife in the background of Tim when he was giving his interview. and his team as well. There was no, jumping around and high fives and, probably getting ahead of themselves. It was all like, all right, a little bit like out of the Gladiator thing, are you not entertained? Here we are, we've given you a show, we're back, and we're not going to get too excited about it. It was more just they just got it done and just move on. It's probably hard to explain, but just looking at the look on their faces in the background, normally the jubilant and hugging and high-fiving, it was just more of, hey, we're back and we're just happy just to get through this fight. And that's what I've said all along. Just win this fight. Doesn't matter how you do it. The fact that he did it impressively is even better, but the fact just to get through the fight, and then he can look towards those bigger fights down the track. Now, the thing after the fight in the press conference that got my attention was that he said that the weight cut was probably the hardest he's had. I know they're all talking about Thurman and maybe Charlo and Spence and all these guys, but he did say it was the hardest weight cut he's done. And who knows, does he go up to middleweight? Be a big move from him, but geez, you may as well be 100%, not 95% when you're trying to make weight. He did say it was a lot easier this time than the Murtazalia fight. I think I mentioned that yesterday because of the rehydration clause that wasn't in place for this fight because it wasn't an IBF title fight. But did mention that maybe he could go to 160. And if he goes to 160, just take this off him, yeah. And if he goes to 160, then all of a sudden our whole view of Tim has to change. I mean, what's at stake for him? There you go, man. We've been talking about all these 154 pounders. Do all of a sudden we have to start talking about Lara and Adamez, Janabek, Zarafa maybe, these types of guys. There's some good fighters at 160, and he mentioned that himself. So do we now have to maybe start thinking that along those terms and not the usual 154 pounders? So yeah, look, it's a lot of options for Tim all of a sudden, isn't it? And I did say yesterday too that if he beat Joey Spencer, that all of a sudden the Murtazalia fight will be quickly forgotten. But I think the most important thing is I don't think it's forgotten by Team Zoo. That's the good thing. I know all the fans in the crowd and online were saying Tim's back and look out and this and that. But what I was more happy about is that, again, looking at his crew, I don't think they were thinking that. They were just thinking, thank God he got that one out of the way. More so for his mental demons. You got to remember, his team would have had to have stuck by Tim in the 6 months or whatever it's been since that Murtazalia fight. We all move on with our lives. They had to be around Tim, especially his wife, and seeing what he went through behind closed doors and how hard it would have been for him. You've got to remember, boxers or like any elite athlete, they're all very, let's just say, strange individuals. They're all driven a different way than the rest of us. And it would have been hard for him with those inner demons over the last 6 months. And Alex, I think it was, or Alexa, they would have been, and his team, Glenn and Igor and all them would have been along for the ride, and it would have been extremely tough. And I think it was just a matter of, hey, thank God that's over and he's got that win, and at least he can put the demons of the Murtazalia fight away or to the side, and now we can move on, and whatever happens from now happens, but at least we've got that one done. And as I said, at 160, geez, the fights with their Lara, Adamez, or Janabek, geez, some big fights there, isn't there, for him? But look, I still think the Thurman fight gets done. I think that fight will get done. They're talking about maybe July for that one. Fundora's in the mix as well. I'm sure that if either of those fights are doable, then you'll probably see Tim, cut off an arm if he has to make 154, especially Fundora. But either way, I'm just really happy. I'm sure you guys out there are just really happy that he's gotten through this, and we can see a smile on his face again. That's probably the main thing. And then he can reset. This fight wouldn't have been too taxing on him, so I'm not too stressed about him backing up in July. I think he'll still be nice and fresh and ready to go. He'll probably take a week off and be back he'll probably be back in the gym today. That's the sort of guy he is. And then we can start talking about the Thurmans and maybe Charlos, maybe, I doubt Spence, but Ortiz's, or maybe the jump up to 160, we'll see. But end of the day, again, I was really impressed with Tim on all fronts. And as I said, he would have exercised a lot of those inner demons, which is even better. So how did you see it? let me know in the comments. I'll be talking about it more tonight on the on Talking Boxing. I'm sure everyone's got their own opinions, but so happy for Team Zoo and Australian boxing. All of a sudden is back, isn't it? It's amazing when you get your most sort of well-known fighter have a win, and we've had a couple in a couple of weeks. We've had George Kambosos as well. I might talk a little bit more about him tomorrow. Actually, he had some pretty harsh things to say on social media after the fight, or might even been before the fight. So I might look into a little bit further, and we'll talk about that tomorrow. But for today, guys, have a great Monday. Let us know your thoughts. We'll talk to you tomorrow.